Okay. Good morning.
Morning.
So, I think one thing that we want to start off with is that streaming is really fundamentally changing the music business. Just yesterday, Universal announced that streaming revenue surpassed download revenue for the first time ever in one of its quarters. So we're really seeing a reshaping in how the music business markets and monetizes its content. So I'm really excited to have two people here who are at the forefront of that change. I've got Jenny Hermanson, who's the managing director of the Nordics for Spotify, and she heads up the entire commercial team in Sweden. So they're doing some really groundbreaking work there. And then I've got Ankit Desai, who is with digital strategy at Universal. And of course, he's looking after a lot of their online marketing and how they partner with startups. So he's also really kind of at the center of this change. So Jenny, by the way, I'm Thomas. I'm the CMO of Soundrop, clearly the biggest of the companies on stage right now. So, Jenny, I wanted to ask you a bit, with everything you see in Spotify, what kind of patterns with consumer behavior do you notice now?
Well, this week in Sweden, it was a research study released that 3 out of 4 people is using some kind of streaming media today. So that could be Netflix, it could be Spotify. So I think that's like the first thing to say is like streaming is here to stay, and that's the currency of the music industry today. And then if you take another angle of it that we talk a lot about is what is streaming today, what is actually streaming for an artist, and maybe turn that into a discussion about fans and how you can reach fans and like treat artists as human beings, but also treat the fans as human beings. And I think the interesting part there is where these two meet and open up for that.
So, Ankit, obviously, your team is trying to respond to this change. And how are you guys doing that?
Right, so a lot of it starts with, at least in my case, like looking at the data. If we just jump into a story, there's a story of Tove Lo, who's now one of our biggest artists today. But in about, I think it was mid-2014, last summer, we were trying to figure out why she was still doing very well, but why she wasn't doing as well in Sweden, which is her home country, she's from Stockholm, as she was doing, say, in the Netherlands, in France, also in Germany. And kind of looking at the data, we found that when an artist breaks into the mainstream, when they go right to the top, they always, in most cases, they need some sort of subculture, some sort of counterculture that propels them up there. And you saw this trend in similar artists like Lana Del Rey and artists like Lorde. But so in France and the Netherlands, they had this alternative subculture that propelled Tove into the top. But in Sweden, it just wasn't big enough. So one of the things that we found was, okay, if we did some sort of EDM thing, it could be, we saw there would be a lot of potential. And then obviously 2 months later, we released Heroes with Alesso and her. And it went to the top of the charts. So what we're seeing fundamentally is that all fans are not created equal anymore. Before you had a 35-year-old dad and a 17-year-old girl who would both go out and buy a CD and they would pay $10. But today, if this 17-year-old girl streams 100 times more than this 35-year-old dad who puts on his rock album once a week on the weekends, you're making much more money over here. So that so we're moving towards kind of trying to identify and, I don't know, almost nurture these super fans, if you will.
So we hear this term a lot, and it's bounced around, this notion of a super fan. And I guess everybody has their own sort of definition of what that is. How do you define that?
I would say from our standpoint, we have like 75 million super fans. So we have to treat them in a good way. That's a bit of a challenge. But for us, it's about like deliver the best content for like what people want to hear at like that time. And also open up for like rediscovery of music. I think that is also super important. We'll talk a lot about discovery today, but it's also about rediscovering like what you used to love and maybe have forgotten about. And that's also that's where you have like the real super fans. I mean, if you've been listening to an artist for like 20 years, open up for discovery, like for new artists, but also open up for like get to know the artist more and get like deeper into the artist.
I think one of the remarkable things about Spotify is that you talk about the moment of discovery or the moment of rediscovery, but actually for the first time we're able to monetize that, which is a fairly fundamental shift that the music industry has never really had before. And so when you look at superfans, Ankit, how do you define that term?
Right. I mean, so kind of the insight for this whole thing came from, we were looking at one of our biggest playlists, Digster, in the UK, and we saw that about 75 or 80% of the streams were coming from a very small percentage of people. And obviously, as Jenny said, it's very important to treat them as human beings. These are people who have a burning fire and a passion for the music. And now, for the first time ever, we have the chance to kind of, reward them for it more than somebody else. So maybe one of the things that we're going into now is we've just invested in this company called New Day Games, which is all about kind of finding these superfans, nurturing these superfans, and kind of taking them from discovery, as you said, to actually engaging much more with the artist to the point where you become a superfan, even if you didn't start off as one.
So I think that's actually a very, very good point to talk about, because nobody starts off as a superfan. I've got to discover the music first. So how do we transition someone from that moment of first discovery to becoming, let's maybe not say a superfan right away, but how can we help guide them on that path?
I think it's about the easiness to discover more. Have first off, from the product side, have a product that open up for finding out more. But then I think what's amazing, and I love the digital era we're living in, is that you can find out so much more around that. But then also we have the opportunity to actually drive people, not just in the streaming, but also go to a concert, buy merchandise, read more about the artist, find similar artists, find collaborations that they be doing. But I think also what I find super interesting is the correlation between the live scene and also the streaming, and how that can capitalize on each other.
Do you see a connection, for instance, like when a festival releases?
Yeah, absolutely.
Something?
I mean, we have a good case from, I think it's from Holland, where First Aid Kit. So the interesting thing is the faces is that we know that Twitter, when you release the schedule for a summer festival, it's Twitter that is massive. People tweeting about the artist they're looking forward to see. During the festival, it's Instagram, because then you want to post photos, you're there, you're enjoying your artist. And then afterwards, it's Facebook, where you start following the artist and you want to find out more. And in that, we have streaming as a foundation all the time, because you want to find out more about the artist, listen into the artist before you're actually going to go and see it live. And then also during and just before festivals, we can also you like this artist, maybe you should go and listen to this show, or this show, this is artist that you're gonna like. And then afterwards, of course, that's how you take your memory with you. And you can create playlists and memories.
And I guess, on our side, it's more of, and it's great that you brought up the whole streaming thing, because when you think about this...
that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, right. When you think of this transition from a transactional model to access-based, the buying decision is already made when a person is paying whatever $10 or 99 crowns a month for Spotify. So now it's, at least from our end, it's more of a question of how do we engage the user as much as possible, so that we're top of mind, our artists are top of mind when they go into Spotify, or they go into whichever streaming service they're using. And in that case, it becomes much more of a question of just filling the internet with amazing content from our artists, so not just the songs, but also activations, also just give the fan the opportunity on their own time to discover more sides to the artist rather than just the song.
Absolutely, and I think fundamentally that was one thing we were trying to do when we created our kind of marketing toolkit, Show.co. We were really looking at how you can take someone on this journey, and the idea being that you've got to make it very easy for them, but you've got to give them kind of the opportunities to take their own path. I mean, people will move on. They'll stream something. They'll then go to social media, try to engage more with an artist, and just making that pathway as frictionless as possible really will lead them to this moment of becoming someone that you can repeatably monetize, which I think is the beauty of the streaming world. As you mentioned, we fundamentally are no longer kind of in a transactional business.
Right.
We are fundamentally in an engagement business now, which is an amazing change.
It's amazing, but it's also, I mean, everything, as we've been talking about now, is about, it's so much out there. I mean, we put like 20,000 new songs every day into Spotify. So it's also about like reaching through the clutter. And I think attention is the new commodity that you really have to, we have to be better at it. But then also something we talk about a lot is, I've been at Spotify for 6 years, and it's been a huge change since I started. Like, the biggest thing everyone was talking about in the beginning is like, why I invested so much in my CD collection, and like, how can I trust you? You're not going to be here in a year, so I don't want to like put it in the cloud. While today, like, even Microsoft moved into the cloud, and I used to work for Microsoft, and they've been talking about the cloud for like 15 years, but it's actually happening right now. And I think it's really, really important for all of us to remember that we're like in the middle of the change, and it's crazy how much it changed over the past years. And I think like we're not done here. It's so much more to do, and we have so much more to learn as well from this new landscape.
So, I mean, we've got a lot of entrepreneurs out in the audience today, probably wondering, what this means for them, or how they can take something away to bring into their own ideas if they're trying to start something in music. What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, my thought is basically, obviously this is something that we talk internally a lot, is that the distribution, everybody says that the music industry has changed. Yeah, the distribution model has changed for sure. And now kind of the real dynamite is happening in terms of how music is marketed, in terms of how music is promoted, in terms of the most important relationship that an artist has, that's with his or her fans. And in that sense, I think it's, and also I have to say that especially in the Nordics, the record labels are becoming much more open and to collaborating with startups rather than trying to kill them, which has, I guess, happened before.
It's kind of funny because I didn't come from the music industry. I just suddenly, a few years ago, found myself in the middle of it when we launched the Soundrop app. And I have to say, I was pretty blown away at the level of collaboration and openness that was really possible with the majors. And of course, I think Spotify proves that actually working within the industry and within the value chain, you can really create something incredible.
And I think it's about never stop believing that you can change something, and then also put your heart and mind into it all the time. I think that's where like the real passion comes from. And I think, I would say we have like the best CEO in the world, because he's challenging us all the time, constantly, which is quite amazing. And that's also something, it's inspiring to work in that surrounding, and then also open up for like meeting a lot of new people and like find new ideas and create something new all the time and open up for that. I find it really interesting.
It's pretty amazing to me, because when I came into it, not to brag about Universal at all, but actually you usually don't think of the big company in the space being the one that wants to work most closely with startups, but that was actually what we found. Not just because of you, actually, not at all, really. I don't think we were even talking then. But no, you usually don't see that the big entrenched player is the one that's going to try to push the envelope forward. But you have some interesting stuff happening with the Universal Labs, right?
Right. Yeah, I'll try to keep it quick because it looks like we're out of time. But yeah, so we have this in-house agency called the Creative Labs, which basically they only work with artists. They only work with our own artists. And they try to come up with awesome creative campaigns around us. Yeah.
Well, it looks like we are out of time. I didn't actually notice the clock was there, but thank you both for coming here and chatting a little bit about how the music business is changing and how people are responding to that change. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.